Gary, nip down a shop for me. You can have 10 pence for going. Welcome to the Tainted Tavern.
Welcome to the Tainted Tavern. Come sit inside with me.
I was reading in the news today that a new 10p coin is issued. Goes into circulation today with Prince Charles replacing the... I keep calling him Prince Charles, of course he's King Charles now, isn't he? So King Charles replacing the image of the late Queen. That's on the front of the coin, and on the back is a grouse, a type of grouse that is only found in some parts of Scotland and is highly endangered. And it got me to thinking that 10 pence, I mean, what can you get for 10 pence these days? What is 10 pence worth? By the way, I've got a Guinness in the glass, which costs considerably more than 10 pence. An Haunted Bookshop in the bowl. When I was a kid, 10 pence was a big deal. That was the reward I always got off my grandmother for going down a shop for her. She'd say, Gary, go down a shop, you can have 10 pence. And she'd send me down for 10 number 6, which were the cigarettes she used to smoke, Players number 6. And something else, some odds and ends, maybe some lost in dance sweets, and then I could have 10 pence out of the change. And you could get a lot for 10 pence. Oh, quite popular when we were kids were 10 pence mix-ups. You'd say to the shopkeeper, we had a kind of newsagent's tobacconist down the bottom of the street from my grand's house, which is where I always used to go. I used to buy all my comics and everything. You could get comics then for 8p, which would leave you with 2 pence. And for 2 pence you could get quite a few sweets. You used to have blackjacks and refreshers. No, there wasn't blackjack and refreshers. You did get refreshers, but I think they were like 1 pence. But you could get blackjack and fruit salads, and you could get 2 or 3 of them for half p. So for 2p you could get 6, maybe 12 sweets. And for 10 pence, a 10 pence mix-up, you should come home with a fairly sizable bag. These days, I mean, I very rarely carry money, to be honest with you. I've always got a card. Although I have lately taken to keeping a couple of pound pieces and maybe a bit of silver in my wallet. Because always relying on card, of course, you pop into a supermarket to do some shopping and you go to get a trolley, and you can't get a trolley because you need to put a pound in, which you get back when you put the trolley back. But very rarely have I got money on me, so I have taken to carrying a couple of pound. Believe it or not, there are still a couple of pubs in my local area that doesn't take card. The Griffin Inn, better known as the Bog, probably my favourite pub. And you go down there, I've got to pop in a co-op with my card and draw £20 out, or £40, whatever. Depending how, I only usually go down for an hour on a Friday evening, so I generally take 20 quid with me. It's enough for a couple of pints and a whiskey. And we've lost so many coins since I was a kid. We used to have a half-pence coin, that's gone now. I think the coins you get now is a 1 pence, a 2 pence, a 5 pence, a 10 pence, or a 20 pence, then a 50p, and then the next one after that is a pound coin. And you've got a £2 coin, of course. And I believe there are a limited amount of £5 coins. Generally when you think of a fiver, you think of a note, £5 note, £10 note, £20 note. But yeah, 10 pence. So they put new 10p coin in circulation. I can't think of anything you can buy for 10p. I mean, if you sent a kid down a shop today and he asked for a 10 pence mix-up, he'd be lucky to get 1 sweet. We had so much choice when I was a kid. You had, like I say, the cheapest sweets were blackjacks and fruit salads, but then you had refreshers, which Trigo refreshers, which were a bit bigger. I think they were only about 2 pence, or maybe 1 pence. I can remember them at, so going back. You had those flying saucers that were filled with sherbet, looked like a flying saucer, and they were filled with sherbet. And of course there were licorice, strings of licorice. You could, believe it or not, as well get licorice pipes back in the day. So it'd be a licorice sweet shaped like a pipe with a a red candy sweet on top, which is supposed to look like the tobacco inside smouldering away. Funny, isn't it? You read an article about a new 10p coin going into circulation, and yeah, it doesn't mean anything to you, but it sparks all these memories. I'm glad to be smoking Haunted Bookshop at the moment, because although people class this as a strong tobacco, I've been smoking Old Dark Fired all day. Now that's strong. This is really mild in comparison. I do like a Guinness from time to time. Yeah, and you know, as I say, when I was a kid, 10p was a big deal. I mean, my grandfather loved his garden, and we lived, and our house backed onto a mountain, so he'd send me up the mountain with a shovel, and I'd pick up manure, horse dung, horse manure, horse shit, with bare hands. Used to have it under your nails and everywhere. Didn't bother you. Then every bucket I delivered to him, I'd get 10 pence. I'd be off down the shop then for my comic, and spending the 2 or 3 pence change that I had from the comic on sweets. Yeah, I can remember comics being 8 pence, probably when I was about 7, 8 years of age. When I used to go down the shop for my gran, and she'd let me keep 10 pence, and she may give me a pound, and it'd be a pound note, because you didn't have pound coins then, and 10 cigarettes, players number 6, if I'm remembering correctly, were probably about 30p for 10, so that would have made it 60p for 20, and they were moaning then about the price of them. I can remember my father saying many years ago, when a pack of cigarettes goes up to a pound, I'm giving up smoking. Now it must be close on 15 to 20 pound for a pack of 20 cigarettes, and you can't even buy 10s anymore. And when I was about 11, I started a newspaper round, my first job, and for that I used to get 50p a week, and that was brilliant. 50 pence, bloody fortune. I wonder what a 50 pence mix-up would have looked like back then. I don't think I ever bought one. By then I was 11, and I was hanging around with the rough kids. So I started smoking cigarettes myself back then. And I kept doing that for a great many years, from 11 years of age right up until I gave up. In my late 40s. But yeah, 50 pence was a lot of money. It was an absolute fortune. And for that, I'd get up every day, 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd be up outside the newsagents by 6:30, filling my newspaper bag up, walking around the village before school, putting newspapers through people's doors. And in those days, virtually every house took a newspaper. The bags could be heavy. And there was one guy, and he used to have a dirty magazine, a girly magazine, and the newsagents would put it in a brown bag before we put it in your newspaper sack. And me and a friend of mine, who also had a paper round, we'd meet up in the morning down the bottom of the streets which led onto the old railway line, and we'd flick through his dirty magazine before we delivered it, every week or every month, wherever they came out. Those were the days, my friend. I thought they'd never end, so to say. It was Mary Hopkins, wasn't it? But I wonder how long it will be that there will be such thing as 10p coins. I mean, I don't know what type of use they are these days. The telephone boxes, there's very few of them left. And the ones I have seen, telephone boxes, they don't take 10p pieces. They usually, you pay by a card in a telephone box nowadays. You know, when I was growing up, you had a telephone box practically in in my little village there were 3, and they take 10p's. The old 5p's and all, the current 5p are a little tiny coin. The old one were quite a big coin. It's as though they haven't only shrunk in terms of inflation, they've shrunk in terms of size, because the old 10pence was bigger than the current 10p. But it does make me laugh thinking of that, being sent down the shop. Not only my mother would do it too, and she'd have me to pick up her cigarettes. The shopkeepers never batted an eyelid, they'd serve her with the cigarettes. Then some of them did start getting a bit strict, and you had to have a note from your mother then to buy cigarettes. That was towards the late 70s when there was a lot of in the news, that you shouldn't be sending your children to pick up your cigarettes, and it became illegal then not to sell them to anyone under 18. I don't know, 10p, things you could get for 10p back then. A 10p mix-up, as we called it, was the treat that every kid looked forward to, a 10p mix-up. You'd get quite enough sweets for 10p, enough to rot your teeth. And I think when I finished my newspaper round, my weekly wages had gone up to 75p. I probably would have been about 14.50 then. That's another thing you could get. I always remember getting the bus to school. It was 10pence for a return ticket each way, so 10pence for a return. I sometimes find it amusing, when because I collect old comic books and old magazines, and sometimes in old magazines there'd be an advert from the co-op or the supermarkets that were big then. Tesco's wasn't really a thing then, but the supermarkets, and they'd have their prices up, and it's bizarre to look at it. A loaf of bread, 6.5p. A colour television set, all bells and whistles, £75. I think my father once told me that when he first started work, so this would have been the early 60s, his weekly wages was only like about £2.50. And that's a full-time proper adult job. You go into the local pub back then and get a pint of beer for 4p. So probably by the time we were being given 10pence to go down a shop, you could probably, had we been old enough of course, to go into a pub, got a pint of beer for around 10-15p, I imagine. Of course, we never took any notice of money as kids, it was just good to spend, to get your sweets or your comics or whatever you wanted. And once a year they'd have the budget on, and all afternoon it'd be on the television, and you'd hear the adults moaning, oh, cigarettes, 2pence on cigarettes, 2pence on beer, whatever. Used to bore us stiff, the budget. We just wanted our cartoons. Yeah, so it's an end of an era. A new 10p issued now. Of course, most 10pences in circulation will continue to show the Queen for a great many years, I imagine. They're still legal tender. So as time goes on now, eventually there'll be more and more new 10p coins issued, and it'll be King Charles you'll be seeing on them. It's a good job the image of the royal on the face of the coin is flat, because with his years it'll be costing a lot more for them coins to be produced. If I'd done it in 3D with his years and everything, it'd be the shape of a 50p coin. Because I mean, love him or loathe him, you've got to be honest, King Charles, I keep calling him Prince Charles, is because he's always been Prince Charles throughout most of my life. But love him or loathe him, he's a deeply ugly man. Mind you, I suppose you'd be safer with King Charles than you would with the artist formerly known as Prince Andrew. Yeah, so, new 10p in circulation. The King. I've never been a royalist. When I was younger I used to think, we should abolish the monarchy, get rid of him. But now I got older, I've mellowed on the subject, and I can see, in some ways, the worth, and I'm still not a royalist. But I've got a lot of respect for the late Queen. Certainly. She had a lot to contend with. Prince Andrew, for one. Prince Charles, he's always seemed... There I go again, Prince Charles, King Charles. He's always seemed like a bit of a limp type of person. I saw him once, 1972. My village, when I was growing up, when I was really young, you couldn't see one end of the village, the valley, to the other because of all the coal tips, all the slag heaps. And by that time all the collieries had closed down, so they had a land reclamation scheme, and they beautified the valley once again, made it look as it had looked in the memory of the characters in the How Green Was My Valley novel. And Prince Charles landed in an helicopter at the very top end of Gilbert, right across the road from the social club, to cut the ribbon and announce. We planted so many trees. The old historic Six Bells Hotel was, the ruins were done up into a public seating area and a public toilet, but that's been vandalised over the years, and it's a terrible, neglected site now, which is a pity because the Six Bells is historically important to my village. These chats start off going on about the new 10p coin, and now we're talking about an historical hotel. But it is an historical hotel. It was a big part of Gilbert's early days. And in the book How Green Was My Valley, written by Richard Llewellyn, who was an Englishman actually, not many people know that. He had Welsh heritage, but he was born in London, I believe. He may not have been London, I may be wrong there, but he was certainly born in England. Only he had grandparents up in Gilbert, just up the road here. And he spent a lot of his school holidays here in Gilbert, and he loved the place. And when he wrote his novel How Green Was My Valley, it was very much influenced by his memories of Gilbert. There's a pub or a hotel in the How Green Was My Valley book called the Three Bells, which is of course based on the real life Six Bells. And of course it was filmed by Hollywood with none less than the great John Ford, one of my all-time favourite directors. Did so many great westerns. John Ford directed a young Roddy McDowell, Maureen Water. And I will watch that film from time to time. I've invested in a Blu-ray copy of it. I've always had a copy. I had it on VHS tape, I had it on DVD, and I've got a Blu-ray copy of it now. And I had to look at Hollywood's idea of, because it was, of course, wasn't filmed in Wales, it was filmed on film sets. And Hollywood's idea of Gilbert Gork is just bizarre. But during a period of How Green Was My Valley was set, do you know, 10 pence probably would have been an absolute fortune. Of course it wasn't decimal and it was old money. So what would the equivalent of 10 pence been? I don't fully understand the way old money works, and I was only 7 years old when it switched over to decimalisation. But I hear the old prices sometimes, looking through old British magazines, and they say 2 and 6. And I think that means 2 shillings and 6pence. A 6pence was another coin we used to have. Yeah, so we had the halfpence coin, the 1pence coin, the 2.5pence coin, then a 5, which is called a shilling, or a bob was the nickname for it. Then 10 pence, which the old timers would refer to as 2 bob, because 5 pence times 2 bob. And 50p was known as a 10 bob. In fact, I still refer to a 50p as a 10 bob bit. Anyway, this Haunted Bookshop's very nice, and so is this Guinness. So I hope you've enjoyed my brief reminiscence sparked by the introduction of the new 10 pence coin going into circulation. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment down below. What are your earliest memories of the coins we used to have? What could you buy for 10 pence when you were a kid? And American viewers, what was the... You've got cents and things in America, haven't you? Cents and dollars. Did any of my American viewers would have done a newspaper delivery job maybe in the mid-70s? How much did you get? I'm going to wrap it now, so usual thing, thumbs up, comment down below, please subscribe and share the shit out of this video. Thanks for watching the Tainted Tavern, and please come back soon.
Please come back soon.